For more on all of this, then, France 24's international affairs commentator Douglas Herbert joins me on set. Doug, we're seeing some of the early images of this state funeral. Take us through what we've already seen and what we're expected to see later today.
Yeah, well, we're approaching what will be the culminating chapter, if you will, of what you said are a week-long series of commemorations for the 39th president of the U.S., a president whose legacy has undergone a radical sort of rethink in light of the things that have happened in the 44 years since he left the White House in January 1981. He is seen by many today as a stark contrast, a throwback to literally, we were talking earlier about this, a bygone era. Jimmy Carter, both during his time in the White House and before, one of the reasons he was elected, but especially in his post-presidential missions, his post-presidential life, which was 11 times longer than his tenure in the White House itself. He was a man who, when you said his name, it was associated with words like humility, like decency, quiet grace, fidelity. These are all words which you might say sound very dissonant in today's Washington, and not just Washington, but in a lot of the world beyond, in politics, in society, where those virtues, if you will, those human traits are more and more rare commodities, at least skeptics might look and say, at the political landscape. Jimmy Carter, there's almost a sense right now that this is people have pushed pause on the chaos of the world for the moment in this last week, to sort of take a step back and to try to take stock of why Jimmy Carter was seen as such a moral beacon, the things he did that established him as such a powerful voice for moral leadership in the world. This is a man who traveled the entire world more than he did in his presidency, after his presidency, befriending some of the icons of our age. Nelson Mandela and Jimmy Carter became very close friends. Mandela invited him into the Elders, very exclusive moral club. And there's a reason for that. So Carter really does stand apart. Yes, he has traditionally, until now, the conventional wisdom in textbook history of his presidency, terrible president, amazing post-president, amazing ex-president. He did great things after his presidency, horrible, awful things as president, a weak president, failed president. That's being reassessed right now. People are even looking back now at the things he did during his presidency, yes, which were overshadowed by horrible economic turmoil, high inflation, soaring unemployment, the energy crisis, the malaise of America as he acknowledged it at the time, the economic misery, all of that, but with some great achievements as well. Putting human rights once again front and center on the agenda, on the U.S. foreign policy agenda, pushing for conflict resolutions, obviously securing that still historic, all these years later, even given the wars raging in the Mideast, that peace treaty between Israel and Egypt, the famous handshake between Menachem Begin and Anwar Sadat. But even beyond that, those are the textbook things we all talk about. Reassessing things, he created the Department of Education, hadn't existed, Departments of Energy. Like I said, he put forward things. He reopened the relationship with China. He put decency front and center once again in the White House. He was a man known for, he was never seen as a Washington insider. He sort of chaffed at the idea of being a Washington insider, didn't really like politicians. Washington saw him as an outsider. He didn't even get along with a lot of the people who would be his natural allies. So this was a man who struck a very sharp contrast with what had come before, and even what would come after him in terms of his style. He was a dressed-down president. He and his advisors would sometimes, have jeans on in the White House. He was known for his little casual cardigan sweaters. He did fireside chats with the American people, reminiscent of what FDR had done in an earlier era with the radio chats, sitting literally by a fireplace, chatting with the American people. Jimmy Carter campaigned on a slogan, which almost sounds like a throwaway line today. He says, "I'll never tell a lie. I will never make a misleading statement." That takes on massive ramifications when you think of it in the context of today's extremely polarized politics, where trust in government and trust in overall institutions is lower than ever. People are embracing this moment right now, this remembrance of Jimmy Carter. A president, even if they weren't supporting him in the past, some have begun to support him, some have become closer to him, some still might not love the guy, but I think there's a new light in which his legacy is being assessed.